Welcome, black listeners, to another episode on the Cerebral Cricketer podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest on the show. So, we have Kyle Klein, one of Netherlands' most exciting young talents, a skillful right arm seamer and rising star in the Dutch setup. Kyle has already made an impact with standout performances in both ODIs and T20s. So, we'll explore his journey, minds, what he takes to perform under pressure on the international stage. So, Kyle, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I've noticed a lot of people with ethnicity of South African or from a South African background. They play all over the world. It's pretty cool. A lot of talent from South Africa. So you're originally from South Africa. You're born there, if I'm not mistaken. So what was life like in South Africa and your childhood in relation to cricket?
Yeah, I grew up in Cape Town. I went to Rondebosch Boys High School, um, a great cricketing school and sporting school. I grew up 40 minutes up the coast on the west up the west coast in a little town called Melkbos. But yeah, obviously growing up in South Africa, cricket's all over the place. Growing up with my brother, we obviously played cricket in the backyard together. And growing up in a pretty sporting family, not necessarily from my parents' side, but just holistically with my family. Yeah, so just kind of played cricket and rugby and all sorts of sports growing up. Yeah.
And so what was your other sport apart from cricket? Was it rugby? Is there any other sports? Like I think hockey, golf, and stuff are pretty popular
Yeah,
in Africa. So.
I played a lot of rugby and cricket pretty much. I've only kind of got into golf after school. I wasn't until about the age of 15, 16. I wasn't really going to play sport much. And then I don't know what happened then, but ever since then, I've kind of picked up a lot more sports. I like to play all sorts of sports. I cycle, tennis, gotten into my paddle. So yeah, it's at the moment it's kind of doing as much as I can. I really enjoy paddle and golf. That's especially when we're on tour all the time. It's paddle, golf. Yeah.
And what made you pick cricket? Like, is it because your family, your siblings, friends that just played cricket, and you just naturally gravitated towards it?
Yeah, my obviously I got my older brother's. He's 4 years older than me, and he's also playing for the Netherlands. And my grandmother, or the story is that my grandmother was throwing him balls when he was 2 years old. And ever since I can remember, we've been playing cricket in the garden. Um, yeah, we play. I mean, what I'm 24 now, and we still when we go home in the summers, we play cricket in the back garden. Yeah.
And what made you gravitate towards pace bowling as opposed to? I know you bat as well, and there's many things you can do as in cricket. Like, you can be a wicket keeper, you can be off spinner, leg spinner. But what made you gravitate towards pace bowling?
Probably being the younger brother, having to bowl to him in the garden. He was very kind to me, and it was pretty fair. We batted and bowled to each other. But growing up in South Africa, looking up to guys like Dale Steyn and Sean Pollock was a big guy playing when I was growing up. Um, I think you kind of just in the garden. I kind of like to impersonate being these people. So that's probably why.
And was there a club that you sort of joined from a young age when you started that cricket journey?
Uh, Not really. Like I said, I grew up quite a way out of Cape Town, or like the center of Cape Town. I went to a small school where it wasn't really focused on sport. My mom and dad aren't very big with sport, more our cousins, and they weren't too big on their sport and pushing us to do whatever we wanted to do. So it kind of clicked for me when I went to Rondebosch Boys. That's a very very good cricketing school, and that's kind of where they laid a platform to try and become a professional cricketer and have those aspirations of going further.
And was there any coaching that you were exposed to at that time, or a coach that showed you the ropes when it comes to the technical aspects of bowling or anything of that sort?
Yeah, when I was 15, I when I was 14, I was playing in the B side, and when I was 15, I got the chance to go on tour with the under 15 A team. And my first game was terrible. I think I dropped two catches and I struggled to bowl. It's actually kind of gone full circle. He's actually coaching now in the Netherlands. He coaches against my rival club, coaches for my rival club, and he just took me to the indoor center and he just put a cone on the top of off stump and he just said just bowl there. And ever since then, it's kind of gone on from there. He just said just try and bowl top of off stump. If you get it from there, you get it from there. Uh, and that's kind of a little mantra for me going even now. That's all I try and do. Try and keep it simple. Yeah.
That's interesting because was there a fixation on pace or was it more line and length? Because that's I think a lot of bowlers typically, especially pace bowlers, grapple with that where it's like coaches might just tell them no, slow down because you don't want to bowl too many wides, and so you got to bowl line and length as opposed to try and bowl as fast as you can, but the radar might not be there, especially as a young player. So did he kind of strike that balance, or did he kind of prioritize one over the other? What was the situation there with your coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually at that stage bowling off like a 6 step run up. It was like literally just accuracy. And I definitely think that's translated to sort of the type of bowler that I've become now, where I mean, I bowl decent pace, but it's not express pace. So it was definitely an accuracy sort of thing. And then when I started playing first side, I'm actually our Dutch bowling coach now. He's Ryan van Niekerk. Um, he was my coach when I was 16. There's a Gary Kirsten Academy that runs out of Rondebosch Boys, and he kept on working on my run up with me, run up, run up, run up, because I was bowling off 6 steps, so I didn't know how to get to the crease. And yeah, it's gone full circle with both of those coaches. Actually, they're both now in the Netherlands. Um, Ryan's now our national bowling coach, which is pretty cool. But that was the one thing that sort of propelled me to get a bit more pace. And my accuracy is obviously the most important thing for me. But the run up for me, everything comes from being a fluent run up, and especially watching guys like Dale Steyn. That run up is as good as it gets. So yeah.
So how did you work on getting fluent in your run up? Was it specific drills, or people talk about alignment? I'm not privy or across the kind of mechanics of how to get pace bowling in line in that sense. But was it what aspects about the coaching did your coach instill when it came to having a fluent run up?
Yeah, he started with, it sounds a bit silly, but you'd close your eyes. Um, you'd start at the crease, facing the other, well, facing towards the boundary. Obviously, the pitch would be behind you, and you close your eyes and you run up. You build your momentum, and then as soon as you feel like you've got like you want to build your run up slowly, with your momentum of your run up. So you want to obviously be running at a similar pace, but as you gather momentum and you feel like you're at your maximum, I don't know, maximum velocity, then you jump and then you land and you get somebody next to you to put a cone down where your front foot lands. And you go back, close your eyes. You do that, I don't know, 3 or 4 overs, and then you see like where the consistent ones are. And then from there, you back work it, and then you go to your run up and you space your cones out and you try and get your stride length consistent, and your takeoff point. So it is quite technical if I talk about it from that perspective. But a lot of it's based off the feel. That's I think where sport becomes quite unique. It's a lot about your feel and your instincts. So that closing your eyes drill that's kind of what brings that natural consistency to it.
That's really insightful what you mentioned about the training that you had to do when it comes to closing eyes, like just what you said about the instincts and the feel kick in. Like I guess if you're doing that kind of training where you have to close your eyes and get everything spot on from a young age, you keep trying it over and over again. it's obviously a good way to indicate, you know, what you can naturally, if things line up naturally without you even kind of overthinking about it, because you're closing your eyes, you're just trusting your feel and your rhythm, and you have to sort of have everything in sync. So obviously over time it'll just get easier and easier, and it just becomes like muscle memory, I assume, right? So how long do you feel like do you have to go through that training in order to make sure that alignment happens when it comes to where you plant your foot, because you're closing your eyes essentially?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a definite answer. I just feel I used to run in with and have like a stutter. I used to run in and then stutter and then run in and then you're not sure when you're like the consistency of your momentum going into the crease. Um, yeah, so for me, that happened when I was 16, 17, I think. And my run up hasn't changed since I was 17. So I think it took maybe a season to fully trust, and once that happened, yeah, I'd say maybe a couple trainings, but then it was more like trusting the process, and then being okay with sometimes you're going to bowl no balls or you're going to stutter into the crease, but you just got to keep building that muscle memory. Yeah.
What do you think is the reason? Because this is you see a lot of, I'm sure you've seen a lot of players have this, and especially I've observed it quite a bit where many pace bowlers, it could be at any level, some of them tend to stutter as well.
Mm.
Do you think that, like, what would you pin down that stuttering to? Would it be lack of training or practice, muscle memory, or like, would you say even confidence? Like, how would you pin that stutter to exactly, and how would you advise on to rectify that?
Mm. I don't think it could be like one definite thing. Uh, I'm a big believer in what you kind of feed to yourself around your like before you bowl, and trying to cut out inconsistency. So I used to walk my run up out when I used to stutter. Like it's a simple thing, just get a tape measure and mark it out. Um, you might be stiff one day and you walking maybe 5 centimeters shorter per step, whatever it is, over a couple steps, that's enough for a no ball. Um, and then I also like what a big thing for me. I don't know. I think I saw it on a TikTok one day. I actually saw it on a podcast, and I was like, "That's actually so true." Is sometimes guys before the game they're about to run into bowl and they running out their run up. Like you see guys they're not bowling. It's a practice run up, and I'm like, you haven't practiced this enough. If you're about to bowl and you're not sure. I used to do that for about 4 or 5 years until thought about it. I was like, it's true. If you're training it enough in the week, you you're not gonna rock up to a game and run through a run up. Um, and I think those like sort of actions can filter into your confidence. I also I'm a very nervous guy. Like before the game, I'm like, I don't want to bowl a no ball. Yeah, I'm really nervous. I haven't bowled a no ball in maybe 3 years, I think. But those things around the game, you're always going to have those thoughts. But I think those but not bowling no balls at training, making sure your run ups on point, marking it out, taking care of those small things. I think that goes a long way in such a simple thing. Like you just have to run up and keep your foot behind the line. Um, yeah.
What's really interesting is that what you mentioned about not bowling no balls. Because do you make sure that even in training, because a lot of people, many bowlers, especially when I'm training in my club team, it's like they sort of don't care that they're bowling no balls, and sometimes even I know that international cricketers, sort of do that too at times, like because it's just training, whatever it is. But do you try to strictly kind of make sure that even in training you don't kind of let it slide, and not bowl no balls, and you're aware of that, and try to make sure that translates into the match? Because obviously if you haven't bowled it for, I think you said 2 years, then you're doing something, I'm sure, in training to help with that.
Yeah, it's a funny one. The batters always get upset because I do like in the trainings. I do bowl no balls sometimes. Even sometimes it's consistently no balls, but I think it's up to the surface you're running in on. Sometimes, especially when you're playing international cricket, the surfaces are so pure that and it's consistent. Sometimes you're training, especially with club stuff or with the World Cricket League too. The facilities sometimes aren't up to, they aren't like perfectly flat ground. So sometimes you will naturally bowl no balls. Um, and that is something we do talk about in training. But for me, the rhythm comes first. So if I'm in rhythm, that trumps my run up a no ball in training. That's the most important thing. And then I'll make sure the day before a game, or at least 2 days before, that I do a session where like I get my rhythm and I'm making sure that I'm keeping my foot behind the line. I'm happy to be even my front toe can touch the front line. And that's a nice thing. If you're an opening bowler, you can either, especially when you're bowling first. I love bowling first. You can land and you can see exactly where your stud marks are, and then you can kind of match that tempo to where you hit your mark. Yeah.
And we mentioned rhythm as well, because pace bowling is one thing, but then there's different ways to do it, and there's a lot of people that are very consistent, method, very consistent with the way that they go about bowling, as opposed to someone that's a bit more rhythm bowler, who has like an X factor. Like what comes to mind is like Mitch Stark when he's in a good rhythm, he can get those wickets, but he's not like someone like a Pat Cummins or a Hazel. Hazel's probably a good example where he just kind of hits the deck. He's always very methodical, very line and length consistent. And Mitch Stark can maybe not to say he's obviously very accurate, but he's the one that kind of gets those magic balls. He kind of has a different way of bowling as opposed to Hazelwood. So my question is with when how do you know that you're in rhythm, like in how do you work towards that when it comes to in training, like is there something that you feel like you feel good, and you feel like you've done the hard yards and you feel confident, or is there sometimes where you feel like, oh, I'm short of confidence and you may not know exactly why, but then you just train harder to get that feeling again, or would you boil down rhythm to something else?
Yeah, I think that comes a bit with a bit of experience. I used to sort of relate my confidence to performance. There is a side to how performance and confidence relates because that is mainly where it comes from. I think building positive habits and sort of having your one thing that is key to you as a player, and that's what's great about our coaching with the Netherlands is for me it's like, is the ball accelerating off the pitch and is it hitting the top of the stumps? So for me, that's like more of a thing that builds confidence, and also how the ball I can feel out of my hand when it's going to be a good ball. I can just I don't know how to explain it, but I can feel it coming off my middle finger, and I just know when you get your wrist right and it just flicks out. The problem that I've had in the past with that is you go to a country like Oman where the pitches are pretty dead, subcontinent, and then there's not that feedback. Out your hand, it feels good, but the ball's not accelerating and hitting the top of the stumps. And then it's building a process and learning, like, okay, what is that? What is this rhythm or this feeling feel like in these conditions? Uh, so that's the battle. But for me, yeah, I try and find what's going to make me effective in those conditions, and then train that sort of a feel.
So, since you mentioned Oman, there's actually a lot of questions I want to ask. But since you mentioned Oman, I want to jump to that part of your career where in the third ODI you did a Netherlands tour to Oman and you took 4 for 16, which is insane effort, especially in a T20. And you alluded to the pitches in Oman being a bit dead. So and even though that you did feel like the ball was coming out of your hand nicely, it didn't really have that acceleration of the pitch, as opposed to I'm sure the other pitches that you played in, especially in Netherlands. So how did you adjust accordingly? But because obviously you've had success there as well, and what was the strategy you had in order to get around the fact that maybe the ball is not going to travel fast in the way that you might be used to in other pitches.
Yeah, that game was funny actually. First ball, I think I could hit for six over extra cover. I bowled like a long half volley, and you wouldn't think that I'd walk off the pitch with 4 for 16. But in that game, it was I think I went for six and then maybe one or two runs, and I had this instinct. Uh, I'd been hit for four in the ODIs by Jatinder, uh, like smoked me in front of square. But it was with the older ball. It was after the drinks break, and I just had this instinct, like at the top of my mark. I always have Max O'Dowd at mid off. He's a great guy for me to just verbalize, and I don't know if I said to him or it was just a dead instinct thing, but I was like, I'm going to bowl a bounce here, um, and I had my deep square just behind because I thought new ball's going to skid on, bouncer straight to deep square. He smoked it, but straight to the guy, and then that opened up an end for me. And then the new batter, I love bowling to new batters. It's obviously where they're most vulnerable. So then it's just can I hit the top of the stumps? And I just the consistency I think in that game just kept hitting top of the stumps, and I didn't even need to go pace off. Just top of off, top of off, top of off, and then yeah, sometimes it just takes care of itself.
That's really interesting. You mentioned about the bouncer, and it seems like you said it was gut feel. So my question would be, obviously, prior to the game, you would have had your strategies in terms of how you would have approached your bowling that day. But at times, does your gut feel like what you feel like? Oh, I should bowl like this. Override or supersede the strategy that you may have put in place prior to that gut feeling.
Yeah, especially I think that's where the challenge comes in with ODI and T20s because we just came off a ODI series against Oman where we didn't play our best cricket, and I bowled. So I think to him it was like bouncer. He plays the short ball pretty well, but you obviously back yourself. You back your. I'm someone who would back my instinct, and then you also take in there's certain things that can dictate a decision. Like if he's a good player for short ball and the ball's 30 overs old, it's probably not the play. But when it's first over the game and it's a new rock and it can skid on, and then it's weighing in the balance, then you trust your gut. Uh, so yeah, for me there it was like that was just plain and simple. Like that I got that feeling. I thought about it and I went for it. Sometimes in the past I get gut feels and then I just go with them. But I think that quick reflection point at the top of your mark and having someone standing next to you that you trust, that makes a difference.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a team sport. So I can see, the moments in the game that can definitely assist and help anyone. So that's the beauty about cricket. It's not necessarily, individual sport in that sense. And as you mentioned as well, it seems like you also default to the top of off line and length. And I want to kind of track back to, I guess, the early days when you were a young cricketer. Was because I think you mentioned you marked out. Your coach would tell you to put a cone down and sort of hit that spot, right? So, how did that training happen? Where when it comes to bowling accurately, so did you always just kind of aim to actually hit the stump top of off? Because nowadays people talk about fourth line, fourth stump line, and hitting back of a length. So those conversations happen depending on the pitches, but have you just kind of fixated from a young age, just kind of hitting that top of off specifically on the stumps?
I think it stemmed from when I was growing up. I used to be a big swing bowler, and then and then you don't not really bring the stumps into play that much. It's kind of the perfect delivery that pitches on middle that hits top of off that you get bowled. And then coming into the Dutch side and talking to Ryan van Niekerk about how am I going to be effective, and Scott would always talk about we need to take wickets through the middle, and how are we going to find someone that can do this role for us. And then it took the change for me uh, to going from a swing bowler to going to more of a quarter seam delivery that you can pitch on fourth stump, off stump, and I'm not sure which way it's going to go, but then the batter also doesn't know which way it's going to go. So to answer the question of um, the hitting that spot, it kind of came from. I mean, that's what everyone tries to do, I guess. You're trying to hit that cone on 6 meters. For me, it is never really one length. I think to bowl to a lot of different batters and to different batters in different conditions, lengths are completely different. So I think you sort of start at 6 meters, and then from there you've got to find what is the length for that condition. People talk about hard length, and the language around that's quite interesting because so, to you, hard length might be, some guys will say like hard length through your belly button to your chest. Some guys think hard length is what's the most effective length on a pitch. Uh, so, and to me, hard length is what is the hardest length to face. And that is more around, hitting that area that a batter's not going to be sure to go forward or back to. Um, yeah. I don't know if I answered that question. I
Yeah,
kind
no,
of veered off.
what you said about bowling differently to different batsmen, and depending on the conditions, you'll have to bowl differently as well. When do you know when to make those adjustments and what adjustment to make? Like, when do you kind of decide? Is it all come down from, I guess, the strategy beforehand, talking to the team analysts about this batsman having, I don't know, trouble with the short ball, whatever it is, to also analyzing the pitch beforehand? Was it something you sort of, because obviously sometimes you might strategize one thing and then on the field, it plays out a little differently. So I'm just curious as to um, when at one point do you feel confident enough to make those adjustments, and do you just stick with those adjustments in order to get that batsman out?
Yeah, I think that the one thing about playing in different conditions is, being able to adapt to them. And the beauty of, playing international cricket is you have trainings and you have time before to adjust to those lengths. I make a joke, especially when I'm playing club cricket, as I say, sometimes club cricket's harder than international cricket. You go to different conditions, especially in the Netherlands. Sometimes you play on a mat, and sometimes you play on grass wickets that are flat. Sometimes the wickets are spinning wickets, uh, and you don't have a chance to train before the game, or you don't have those trainings before the first match, and then you need to make decisions on the fly. Um, you out your hand. You got to trust your training that you feel like it's six stump or 6 meter length on fourth stump. And that doesn't look effective. It's also important to have someone in your team that, obviously, when you're bowling, you can feel as much as you want and you can see as much as you want. But sometimes having a guy side on, you ask them like, is that a good length, or like, is that too full? And then you get that constant feedback. And I think that's where the communication between your team comes in. Uh, and then that's the hard balance is you play against some guys that their strength might be hitting up the ground, and it might be the best length for that pitch, but that's their strength. So that's a great question because it's hard to find the balance of, is this the length for the pitch against this batter in these conditions, and how effective is that going to be? So I think at the end of the day, it's how quickly you can make that adjustment, and then purely up to your accuracy.
I mean, what you mentioned, it's like you have to try to get as much information you can, because it's interesting. You talked about, communication with your teammates in order to see, because like you're sort of bowling and you only see what you see, right? But then obviously, I don't know, in first slip or second slip, who are normally, batsmen are fielding there too. So they'll probably have also a different angle to kind of see, and if you can get that information as well on top of all your gut feel or on top of the strategy. If you have all that information to work with, obviously you're more likely to make a better decision, right? As opposed to just having one piece of information. So that was very insightful in that sense. And I know while before you actually talked about how you were a nervous bowler. So, what things or strategies or mental strategies have you put in place in order to help cope with those nerves? Because that's nerves is a big, big thing amongst any level of cricketer. Like everyone feels nerves. It's pretty human to feel nerves. So, how do
Mm.
you go about getting around, your nerves and dealing with your nerves?
Yeah, I think as I've started to play more, because I sat on the sidelines for a long time, um, and I actually really appreciate nerves. I used to try and like shy away from them, and that just makes it worse. I know people always talk about you need to acknowledge your nerves; they're there, um, and I literally I have this thought before every game that I'm going to get hit for six every ball. Like that is obviously I have positive thoughts and I want to take wickets and stuff, but I struggle some even in the mornings of the games. Our Hino is our batting coach, and he always laughs at me. He's like, "Just eat something," and I'm like, "I can't stomach anything. I'm too nervous." Um, Sometimes it's better when you play in the afternoon. I can eat something in the morning, but 3 or 4 hours up to the game, I can't really eat much. And those nerves, I've, as I started, the first few games, I was super nervous, couldn't eat anything. And then as I started getting a bit more comfortable, I was able to like eat a bit, uh, and then we had these big games, especially in the qualifiers, and the nerves were back. And I feel like my performances have been pretty consistent, but I feel when I'm nervous, it's a very good sign for me. I feel like prepped and ready. So for me, that's kind of a good indicator to know that I've prepped well and that I'm really up for the game. Uh, yeah, and just for me, as soon as I bowl my first ball, I think I tell Max every time, like, okay, fine, there, the nerves are gone. It's now I'm fine to play, and it's just that first ball. Try and get the first ball on the money, get the nerves away, and then you can play. I get a lot more nervous to bowl than to bat or field. Um, that could just be because it's more of a closed skill where you can't really control what they do to a ball. Um, yeah,
Yeah, because a lot of obviously there's different types of nerves. It seems like the one you're describing is more like the anticipation of doing the actual thing, and then everything before that makes you nervous. But then once you actually do the thing, then it's like the horses are ahead, are going sort of thing. So because a lot of people, like I know, aside from cricket, they might be nervous to go on stage, like stage fright for kids. But some kids, like it's like once they sort of get up there, then it's like the nerves are gone. It's more like leading up to it. They're, I don't know, overthinking like what could happen to him, this and that. So yeah, that's I guess it's a human thing, and people have different ways to kind of deal with it. And you mentioned the qualifiers. Do you mean the T20 World Cup, the one recently that you
yeah. Last week,
okay, so I might as well jump to that then because in that tournament, Netherlands won, and on top of that, you were the second highest wicket taker, which is a huge effort. And so, as we're on this topic, like what was the preparation like before that whole tournament? And you were playing at the Hague, so did you have to make those kind of subtle adjustments as a bowler? So I just wanted to know about your sort of preparation mindset and leading up to that tournament.
yeah. Luckily, it's a club I've played at for quite a while. We play a lot of our inter squad games there, our Pro Series games. We've played international games there, and especially I'm pretty sure we played on the hybrid wickets. And they tend to have a bit more of like skid, and then I feel because I'm quite short, relative to what you'd expect of a fast bowler. I feel like I can be a little bit shorter and then get the ball to still at the top of the stumps, um, especially at VCC. That's where we played in Voorburg, and yeah, for like the calming part was, our coach. We do a lot of analysis, and it's normally a lot of analysis on the other guys. And I was quite nervous. I think it was before the Scotland game. That's obviously, you look at the qualifiers from before the tournament, and you think that's the big swinging game between the two biggest teams in the tournament. And he's just sent me he sat down with me and showed me a graph or a pitch map of me bowling at the VGC, and how effective I have been at the ground with my stats and whatever. Um, and it kind of just calm my nerves a bit, because I was like, well, if I can do what I do, and just execute on the day, it'll all be fine. And luckily enough, a couple of things went my way. I always say that you can bowl well, but cricket's, some guy can have a good day. You can whack your best ball. So yeah, playing at that ground uh, definitely favored me, especially with a lot of the grounds in the Netherlands. That's the one that I would say is the best suited for me. So yeah, I was pretty glad when I saw we were playing there.
And as well in the final game, Netherlands won by 9 wickets, and he took 2 for 27 of, yeah, 2 for 27, which is a mammoth effort. So how did you strategize who you're going to bowl to prior to that game? Because Italy actually have a lot of, they have a few Australian players actually. So Joe Burns played for Australia, Harry Menenti and Ben Menenti, they played domestic cricket. And the Moscow brothers, my friend actually played against in club cricket in Sydney, a small world. But yeah, I don't know if you kind of had to analyze, a footage of who you're going to bowl to and have plans accordingly. So I'm just curious about leading up to that game. What exactly did you do? You feel like that got you those performances on the day?
Yeah, it's a tough balance between, looking into other guys and being yourself and trying to just execute on your best ball. For that game, I felt, they have some powerhouse batters. Emilio Gay, he's a very good player. Um, and Joe Burns, they're a lot of good players. I just felt, if I can hit my length, and have the fielders in the right spot, if they can hit me off there, then that's great. Great. I think my first over, I bowled an off pace ball to Emilio, and he hit me over mid wicket, and I was like, okay, it's a good shot. But I feel like I'm in the game there. Um, and the plans, well, yeah, the plans were obviously the great thing about playing at a place a lot is it's pretty straightforward what you need to do. The on the stumps we play with, um, at the qualifiers now. I'm not sure what the logo was, but normally we play with a little. It's got our lion crest on the top of the stumps. Um, and my thing is, like, if I can just look at that and bowl that ball over and over again, it'll bring me success. Um, so just to go back to answering the question, the on how I went about those guys. I just thought if I can bowl my best ball, I obviously watch footage and know which areas they score in. Um, but sometimes the conditions are so straightforward that if you hit that length, the whole tournament people are struggling to get the ball off the stumps. So that was kind of my strategy going into it. Can I run in, hit my length, as consistently as possible? And that's the other thing is, like, I used to be quite a big cricket nuffy. I still am. Uh, I remember I finished school in 2019 watching Joe Burns play Test cricket for Australia, and now I'm running into bowl to him. It was quite a cool experience. Uh, Especially also if you look at it from being a South African, um, then South Africa and the Aussies have quite a big rivalry. So with a lot of South Africans in the Dutch side and a lot of Aussies in the Italian side, yeah, it was pretty cool. And I I just think you try and back your best skill against their best skill, and it is pretty reassuring to see that you play against you know guys of that caliber, and you come out on top. So yeah.
And how were the celebrations after? I'm sure there was a lot of partying after that.
uh, yeah, the Dutch cricket space is very. I mean, I love it.
I saw Max Jared, the DJ set. I saw something on Instagram, like after the
Yeah,
game, something like that.
yeah, he was on the DJ set. We actually had games. We played Saturday and Sunday. We played club cricket. So the Dutch club scene, they're very keen on us playing, and I also love my club. So we played Saturday and Sunday. So the celebrations were for some guys bigger than others. I've kind of calmed down in the last year and a half. So I think I had one beer and chilled with the guys, and then yeah, I my phone went missing, so I had to run back to the hotel to try and find it, and I found it in someone's cricket bag. It fell out of the valuables bag. So my evening was cut a bit short. Um, but no, the celebrations were good, and the guys knew that we had club cricket on the weekend also. It's quite an interesting thing in Holland. With a couple of us are on contract, but a lot of it is run through the clubs. So we've got a duty to serve, and some guys can play. Some guys can have a long night and play them the next day. I'm not one of those people, so I just chilled with the guys. Maxi was on the sets, and then went home. We had a game to play on Saturday, so yeah.
No, fair enough. I mean, I'm sure I'm looking forward to the next challenge and planning accordingly as well. So I wonder, in terms of celebrations, you have other things that you want to, have your sights on and achieve those, and that list is just going to keep growing in the next few years as well. So I wanted to track back as well and start from the time that because you actually played Netherlands under 19 as well, and this was prior to when you played for obviously for Netherlands, and I had to really dig because it was a bit hard. Like I don't know why for suddenly against because all the other players in other countries, like when you if they've played like under 19s and played for their country, it's very easy to find the under 19 stats. But for some reason, for Netherlands players, like you have to like dig because you can't find it on the normal stats guru engine for some reason. But thankfully, I really did digging and pulled up some scorecards. And so, how was that experience like? The pathway system, if you can explain that in Netherlands, that allows you to kind of make your debut for Netherlands under 19 team.
Yeah, it actually started. I think it was March of my matric year. I was playing for the first team at Rondebosch with another guy who his dad played for the Netherlands. His name's Dave Bakker, and he's been our manager for quite a while. And I was playing with his son. His name's Stein, and we were just chatting. And my dad had always been on about my grandfather, and how my grandfather was Dutch and my grandmother is Dutch, and playing for the Netherlands one day, and would be a cool thing for my dad. We always spoke about it, and I was always keen on it. And we were having a conversation with Dave, and I didn't know he was Dutch. We're just chatting about Holland and wanting to play, and he's like, "Oh, but the Dutch team's actually looking for a fast bowler." So I was like, "Oh, well, I've got a passport. That would be pretty cool." And then we had some conversations, and then 3 months later, I was at the qualifiers, uh, and that's kind of how it happened. It went from I was trying to play for the Western Province under 19 side. I was actually, I think it might have even been around the time we had trials, and then this opportunity arose, and that was kind of a pride thing, to sort of follow, when um, my grandfather was Dutch, so that's kind of how it all stemmed, and then going through that. It's funny you brought that up because I still remember we were playing at VOC against Scotland, um, and Max and Scott were sitting on the balcony, and obviously I'm playing with them now, but I was like, geez, these guys play for the men's side, and I was quite that talking about nerves. That was a very nervous um, scenario to be into, like bowl in front of those guys, and it's pretty cool to be playing with them now. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of how things started, and after that, I went home for a bit. There was COVID, and then I went to the UK. So there wasn't much of a pathway after the under 19 side into the men's side. That's just kind of how things panned out.
And I think in one of the games for when he played for Netherlands under 19, when he got that first cap, what was the emotions and feelings like? Like especially when you're talking about your grandfather being Dutch, how did it feel when you did get that opportunity to play for the under 19 side?
Yeah, it was cool. The I guess the thing that kind of took away from it was the fact that it happened so quickly. The group of guys I played with was great. You know, I had Vikram, Dati played. Played with Boris. You know, there's a couple of guys here that I talk of as, you know, they're very prominent in Dutch cricket. And, you know, that was, I'm a big team guy. And that's what was special to me is like to come into a team so quickly. I met them, I think, a week and a half before the tournament. And by the time we took the field, and I was like, these guys are very good friends of mine. Uh, and when I played under 19, I was like, well, this is cool. You know, it's a great honor, but you obviously want to play. It like sparked a bit of hunger to play for the men's team. But it was very cool for me to, you know, play and I still have the picture that I took of my first game in the under 19 side. It was a warm up game in Amsterdam, and like I look back at that, and that is what's special is how far, you know, I've come in that sort of environment. And then making the debut for the national side, that was obviously that was quite an emotional. I'm not a big crier, but you know that was a pretty emotional time.
With your, I might jump to the your debut for the men's side. So that was because obviously you made debuts in both ODI and T20s. So the earlier one, I think, was your first debut was in the for the ODI side against Nepal. So walk us through that kind of that day, how you're feeling, what you're strategizing with, certain bowling to certain players, and just being a part of the men's national team and the group and the camaraderie there. How did it feel for you that day?
You also the interesting part about that whole thing, well, that whole day and the time leading up to it is, I think June 2023, we went to Zimbabwe for the qualifiers, and I went to the traveling reserve, and then went to the World Cup as a traveling reserve. You know, and this was more actually the World Cup was more of a development thing. I wasn't necessarily going to be the next guy in the squad. It was more just to develop, you know, and I went from traveling reserve development player into the team opening the bowling. It was quite a big jump. You know, normally you think someone would make their debut and be like third or fourth bowler. Um, but I made my debut and I was opening the bowling. And that's, you know, that was the big jump. Uh, and there's a lot of, especially around the preparation, you know, you think you'd come in the game, you could settle into the game, you might bowl through the middle overs with fielders out. Uh, so that was one side of it. The other side was I always thought that when I made my debut, my brother would obviously be there, but he was injured. Um, and it was quite an emotional time for me because Ryan Finicke could obviously be my bowling coach since I was 17. He handed me my cap, and I didn't think I was going to play cricket professionally ever. You know, if you look back 3 4 years ago, obviously an aspiration, but the emotion around that was, you know, I don't think the word you'd use is that you made it, but you know that's something that you get, and you're part of a club that nobody can take away from you. You know, you've played an international game for your country, so uh, yeah, that the beauty in having that sort of an environment where you know you have people around you that care about you is the performance on the field is not do or die. You know, I'm gonna try my best, but at the end of the day, you know, you're playing with people that love and care about you, so care for you. So I can't really remember much about those games. I think we got smashed in my first game. Actually, I think we lost by 10 wickets or 9 wickets to Nepal. Um, But yeah, it was a very cool time.
You said you were the traveling reserve from memory. That's the 2024 T20 World Cup in West Indies. Is that correct?
No, the 2023 World Cup qualifiers in Zimbabwe,
Ah, Zimbabwe. Yep.
and then 2024, like the 2023 actual World Cup when we qualified, I went as more, they called it a development player, and then the last year's T20 World Cup, I was originally a traveling reserve, and then Fred Klaassen got injured, so then I went into the squad um, for the tournament. Yeah,
And then you traveled to West Indies, is it?
yeah,
And how
and in America.
how was that? Was that the first time you going to those countries? What was the experience there? How was it like?
Yeah, that was cool, especially America. If I think of America, I think of a lot of things, but especially all the movies and series you watch is all in America. So it's pretty weird to go there. I wouldn't say it's a country that I've always wanted to travel to. Besides the commercialization of, it's a very commercial country and there's a lot of great like infrastructure, but it didn't spring to me like beauty. Where I think of West Indies, like that's a cool, very cool culture that I'd want to go and experience. Um, so that for me was like amazing. Um, yeah, the West Indies and the people there were so cool and kind. And playing cricket there it had a different feel about it. Obviously, in America, cricket's not a massive sport there, so there wasn't necessarily that whole buzz around the sport. Whereas in America, in West Indies, you can feel that this is ingrained, in their culture. You're watching people in the streets playing cricket. That's always very cool. Like going to Nepal, what a cool country. They love their cricket. I think we played. Sorry, I've jumped a bit, yeah, but we played a game there. When I made my debut, there was, I think, 13, 14,000 people. Um, and there were people sitting in the trees. I don't know how they got into the trees, but if you search on the internet, you search Nepal cricket, people watching in the trees, there's people sitting like 20 meters above the ground, like climbing trees just to watch the game, which is surreal. Never playing in front of people besides family and friends, to playing in front of 13,000, and that was even louder than um, playing in the World Cup. In India, bar maybe when we played against India at the Chinnaswamy, that was extremely loud. Um, but that time in Nepal, talking about like the cricketing culture, that was as cool an atmosphere as it gets. Sorry, I kind of derailed that a bit,
No,
but
no,
yeah,
I mean, it's funny. Like, a country is crazy about the cricket when the people are like climbing trees to watch the game,
yeah,
putting their life in jeopardy just to watch a cricket game.
unbelievable. And they storm into the stadium. Um, and I also thought, I thought I would cop abuse from their fans, um, but they were so friendly. Bowling to their guys, bowling to their openers, and the guys on the side are friendly. They're being kind, which was quite a. I didn't expect that. I thought that you just cop abuse, especially in growing up in South Africa with quite a rich sporting culture. Normally, the opposition gets absolutely abused. Um, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, like Nepalese people are wonderful as well, and I'm sure like it's not like they always have touring sides come and visit their country. So I'm sure like when that does happen, they're going to show all that love and support for even for the opposition team because it might not happen as regularly as they maybe like that kind of thing. And especially with Nepalese cricket, like in I know in Sydney specifically, like we have cultural cricket tournaments. So we have like an Indian cultural tournament and a Bangladesh one and a Pakistan one. But the Nepalese one is making strides as well. And some like I know that some I think even some domestic sort of level Nepalese players come down and play even in the Sydney system as well. And so you can see like that culture is like absolutely growing in Nepal when it comes to the cricket. And I'm just curious because we're talking about traveling. Like, are you the type to do you like traveling and stuff? Like, what countries have you been to? Like, it seems like you come across as someone that does travel, but I don't know if that's the case.
Um, yeah, when I was growing up, I always said to my parents, I love hotels and I'd love to stay in hotels. And now it's kind of become, third of my year I'm in a hotel room. Yeah, I wouldn't say I traveled much before I played cricket, but bar maybe a family trip to the UK. Uh, but now, it's been awesome to experience different cultures, especially at the start of my career. One thing, I mean, I'd love to go back to Nepal because I didn't explore as much as I would have liked. A lot of it was nerves, and I wanted to, be in my own space and chill. It's hard to balance. You're there to play cricket and win games for your team and for your country, and then to take some time off to go and explore. I wish I'd done that more. Um, but yeah, now we've traveled to India, we've gone to Oman, we've gone to Nepal, the States, West Indies, Scotland, Zimbabwe, South Africa. So that has been amazing. It's taken me to places that I didn't I'd never thought I would have gone to Nepal before I played cricket um, for the Netherlands. I didn't even know that we that was a possibility to tour Nepal. And that was amazing going around the world, especially doing it with your best mates. And my brother's in the team, so to travel around the world with him, I mean, that's awesome. So the traveling side of things is something that I didn't realize. I just wanted to play cricket, and now it's taken me to all these places around the world.
And how do you juggle? Like, does it become difficult sometimes when you are traveling? And I don't know, obviously, like bowlers specifically would need to do certain physio work or certain gym routines, that kind of stuff. Does it become difficult if you're traveling so much and you jump from hotel to hotel, or relatively like it's always taken care of, whether it be gyms in the hotel, or you have I don't know physios that come with you and kind of help you along the way?
Yeah, I think I've been quite fortunate with my body and injuries. Quite grateful for how I haven't had these like big injuries. Touch wood. But yeah, I mean, we've always had a physio with us and a strength and conditioning coach, and they're great. I really enjoy that side of cricket, and I love preparation. So I love training all the time. Being in the gym and trying to be the best I can be. So a lot of the time when I'm on tour, a lot of that work's already done. So when I'm touring, it's cool to have a nice gym, maybe for a primer before the game or some recovery work. But when I'm on tour, I actually try and, take all that away. I just want to focus on performance. Um, so when I'm away, when I'm like now, when I'm not on tour, we've got a little bit of time off, but it's like full focus towards next year to the World Cup. And how much work can you do? Can you preload your body and get yourself in a position where, you get to that tournament and it's like, okay, I'm ready. And how instead of like being there and gymming and training and bowling all these balls, like how can I take stress off my plate? How can I go and with something I didn't do at the start of my career, it's like how can I go and have a coffee with my mates, and just chill out a bit, and not necessarily like think I need a gym, get all these things done before you get on that plane. That's kind of the lens that I look through.
And in terms of gym work specifically, I'm curious as to what your gym routine is like, especially as a bowler. Like I'm sure a batsman has a different sort of gym workload or different routine, and similarly for bowlers. So I'd love to just kind of hear what sort of routine you do have. Is it something a bit like when people talk about gym as a normal kind of guy just going to the gym, they're thinking about doing legs, arms, shoulders, different split sort of routine, different days. Is it a lot different for bowlers? Are they doing more, compound lifting or anything, or maybe not even lifting at all because of the workload they need to do, etc.?
Mm, I think everyone's like journey in that space is quite unique. Uh, and I think you kind of find that out for yourself. For me personally, I love squats, um, and I love doing functional movements, ones that can kind of translate to bowling. So my gym work, I try and like learn from the guys around me. Rulof from Namava, he's a great guy. He's got this thing where, well, I don't know if it's an actual thing for him, but I see him go to the gym at least like once every 3 days when he's on tour. Whereas for me, like I don't really want to go to the gym on tour. When I'm out of like now, I'll go a lot. Um, try and get my work in now. But my main thing is I like to feel. I try to explain it to the physios, but I don't know how to. I like to feel, after you squat or you deadlift, your muscles feel tense. If sometimes you haven't gymmed in a while, you get, like you get stiff and stuff. But once you're in that rhythm of squatting 2, 3 times a week, your legs feel um, tense. I don't know how to explain it, and that I love. Like when I'm bowling, I want to feel tension, especially through my back leg, and I feel like I replicate that through gym work, through squatting, and just you're getting lots of load through your muscles, so that when you're bowling, that you can just trust it. I can feel sometimes when I haven't gymmed in a long time, I feel a bit like lethargic, and not, yeah. I'll use the word tense. I want to feel like, there's a lot of tension in my muscles.
Yeah, I sort of relate to that. I don't know about loving squatting. I don't. I'm not like a big squat guy, but in other sense, like I love that like you said, that tense feeling through the muscles. In other parts of my body, like my arms, chest as well. Everyone loves, chest day, whatever it is. But that I think once you sort of exert your energy in a way where you feel like that as well, it does feel like your body's more less sluggish, obviously. So then it kind of gives you that. I don't know. It kind of helps with like me personally, like my mental side in a way. Like I feel like a bit honed in, a bit zoned in into the situation a little bit, especially because I sort of I'm mainly a batsman, so I'm speaking as a batsman where sometimes if you're too sluggish, then it doesn't really help you to be in your game or on top of your game as opposed to kind of honing in as the bowler's running in. I feel like your gym work definitely gives that my muscles that feeling what that kind of translates to that mental focus. Well, I don't know if that's how you see it as well.
Yeah, it definitely. And the other thing I forgot is the one injury that I had recurring, and I think a lot of fast bowlers have it, is like side strain issues. Um, and I think that's the one other thing, that squatting and then band work. That's something I didn't do a lot growing up, but doing a lot of, we call it a pal-off press. You sort of holding a band and trying to counter, like rotate, work on your counter rotation strength, and also like bands over your head, working on, like tipping to the side, and how you can like use your core to, stabilize your muscle, your body through certain movements. Um, yeah, and then that sort of gives me the confidence to just go and let the ball go. You never want to really run in and feel like, oh, I could get injured here. And it's, yeah, a lot of it's mental. Most things it's still a big mental game. And when you've done the work, and there's nothing better than like rocking up to game. You're like, I'm fully prepped. Yeah, I've done my work, and you can just go and play.
Apart from gym work, is there other stuff that you do? Like it could be, I don't know, visualization or even yoga, meditation, I don't know, sauna, cold plunges are a big thing on social media sometimes. So I don't know if you have tried your hand in any of those or anything like that that you do outside of just gym work.
Yeah, I would say I'm quite a curious guy. I'll try a lot of things. I've tried the cold plunges and all this sort of things. I am big into, um, the mental, like, side of visualization. Especially, I don't like playing at grounds for the first time if I haven't been there and like I like to stand in the middle, and I take a bit of time to just like look around and absorb the ground, and the I sometimes then I'll stand at the top of my mark and I'll visualize. I always, my thing is their best batsman, and I'll visualize bowling to their best batsman, and I'll stand at the top of my mark. I'll get close to the crease. I'll try and look, try and take in the ground. Especially a lot of things are it's a lot of visual things come into ball sports. So I'll try and get to both sides of the wicket and visualize when I'm running in where the umpire will stand, um, and just trying to visualize what my best ball will be and how I'll feel through that moment. Um, and then I'll visualize before I go to bed. I mean, it's not noticeable, but I'll take 2 or 3 minutes to just think. A lot of the times, like before games, people ask me like, like even as the night before, like you seem a bit nervous, but it's more that I'm just trying to like prep my brain for the next game. Um, I'll try and visualize. My big thing is I want to get the best batsman out. Um, and that'll be the visualization, and getting to the ground, you like, okay, you see him at the ground, you're like, okay, visualizing how I'm going to get him out. It's a constant thing. And then, you try your best to do it. But the half the battle is just visualizing those things. Um, and before visualization and all these things became a thing, I was doing this, but I didn't realize it until people spoke about it. And it's like, oh yeah, I do that. But it's not like that was one thing that I didn't have to consciously do. That just sort of took care of itself.
Yeah, like with visualization, like definitely like a hot topic in nowadays when every person, not necessarily like has to be professional athlete, but even just normal club cricketers trying to get as much as they can and try to do the best that they can, sort of implement as many tools as they can. And I remember reading an article a long time ago, actually. I think it was on Cricket Info. Like they did a special edition. Like they did a whole article on Brian Lara, and they basically, there was this really cool segment where they talked about like his visualization processes. And I think there's a stat as well, like it's like visualization is basically similar to I guess training, in the sense maybe 96% like the same as training, like actually doing the real training. So the power of the mind's obviously amazing with the subconscious, how that works, and you can train your mind in a certain way and really believe and feel through your visualization. Any player can, it can be a tool to really aid them. And how about like breath work, anything like that? Have you do you try that like as well by any chance, or anything like that?
Not off the field much. On the field, definitely. Um, yeah, I've got some weird routines that I do when I bowl. We don't have to dive into those, but before every ball, I have these weird things that I do, and like a deep breath is one of those things. A lot of the time, that will be depending on the situation. So, like if it's bowling at the death, there's a lot of like conscious breath work that I'm trying to do, um, just like deep breaths and trying to slow things down. Um, but when it's with a new ball, there's not that much breath work. It's kind of just letting things flow. But when I need to take my mind away from negative thoughts, it'll be deep breaths, or I'll throw the ball to mid off and take a bit of time.
It's interesting you mentioned negative thoughts and how to counter that. Is that something you try to be self aware about, and then try to plan accordingly? Like, okay, if I do, like, I don't know, like the common one is that if a bowler gets hit for a few boundaries, obviously a bowler is going to feel a bit of a loss in confidence, and might be a bit negative, or the frame of mind might be a little bit negative. Like, what sort of things you do to counter that, to make sure that the next ball is going to be your best and not be weighed down by what's happened in the past?
Yeah, that's there's two sides to that. It's like the one side is, is it like my best ball that's getting hit, or am I bowling poor balls that are getting hit? So uh, and creating a clear divide between, am I bowling well and getting hit, or am I bowling poorly and getting hit? Because sometimes you bowl your best ball and it's going to get hit for four. But I talk about with some people. I talk about. I like to think what a batsman would average against you. So like if they hit you for five fours in a row and you get them out on the sixth ball, like they're averaging 20, you 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 winning that. So um, but that's only going to happen if you're bowling your best balls. If I'm bowling balls and getting cut, or half volleys that are getting driven, or waist waist high or tit high short balls are getting hit for six, then it's a different conversation, and then maybe the confidence can go down a bit if you're missing. Um, but if you are executing and getting hit, and then there's not much else you can do. Uh, and also, like understanding your miss is a big thing. For me, I'm not someone who misses. I don't really get cut. I don't really miss wide. It might be like a half volley, middle and leg. That I can live with. That's a miss that I can live with. I had a game earlier this year where it was a club game, and I just kept getting cut, and I was like, "Geez, I don't get cut. That's not I don't really miss there." Uh, and then that's where the confidence can be like, "Okay, this is a bit worrying," and it's like, how do you hone back into your skill and be like, "Okay, what am I doing differently?" And then in that game in particular, I wasn't doing anything differently. I just missed, and then you have to accept that, unfortunately.
I might jump back to your earlier sort of ODI game. So there was one, I think it was just a few games after your debut against Canada. We got 4 for 33. So I think that was your best kind of performance earlier on. And do you recall that game? And what was? Do you take a lot of confidence from that game? What do you feel like you did well in that game in particular?
I think that was at Voorburg also. I think first ball I bowled, I got Aaron Johnson out, um, like full. It was too full, but it nipped in at the top of off or whatever, and I was like so grateful, you know, because you obviously want to be on length, and luckily that went my way. Uh, and then after that, that kind of settles you in. I had this thing actually when I was still like coming through. I used to feel like I have to get a wicket or get hit for four to switch on, and I had this mental block around that. So it had to one of them had to come first, and then I could switch on. Um, and then that obviously getting a wicket first ball like helped me switch on straight away. Uh, and then after that, it was kind of just like bashing a length. Um, and then I think I got two wickets at the death. And I try to be consistent and bowl top of off. And luckily that day it went my way.
And I'm also going to jump to there was a T20 Tri Series with USA, Canada, Netherlands, and that was like in and towards the end of 2024. And you were the leading wicket taker in that tournament. So in the first game, you took 3 for 31, and the second game against US, you took also 2 for 11. So walk us through that period. The preparation leading to that. What you felt you did well during those games in order to help you, be at your best.
Yeah, I actually remember that one quite vividly. That one brings back some good memories. Um, if I think back to that series, I just remember the bails being yellow, um, and they were this bright yellow, and like that was great for me because that's where you're trying to bowl. You're trying to clip the top of the bails, especially on in these conditions in the Netherlands. Um, and I like if I close my eyes, I just think of those bales. So for me, it was like how often can I hit those bales? And those wickets actually at that stage in the season, it was around I think it was August last year, and yeah, the wickets at that stage were actually like accelerating. We played. Those are two very good sides, especially that USA side. Um, that Andries Goos guys playing in leagues around the world. They got some good players with um, Aaron Jones, and they're good players. And I'm just trying to bowl my best ball, and let them hit you from there. I think I still went for some boundaries and went for runs in that game in those games. But it was kind of the ball was nipping around and it felt good up my hand. So when I feel like that, then I really feel in the game.
You mentioned, big names like Aaron Jones, Andres Goose, etc. You got him out on Andres and Nitish Kumar. So what was the planning like in the lead up to that game against these kind of batsmen?
Yeah, I remember the good thing was that we'd played the ODI series before, and I think I took four for in the last ODI against USA, uh, and that was like a great game for me. Like I lacked a bit of confidence because the game before, I think Aaron Johnson hit me for a couple, um, but I was getting the ball to sort of like nip back from fourth stump and then somehow hold its line. So I just felt if I can just replicate that ball, um, no matter who the batsman is, I think that's pretty difficult to play, especially if I can get that length right. I can't really remember the exact plans to those guys. I think the Andries Gous dismissal, that was like me, my best ball. And then I think, did you say Nitish Kumar? No,
Yeah,
yeah, uh, he was caught him in wicket. And Scotty, he's a great captain. Like the way he thinks about the game is unbelievable. He actually said this guy's not going to ramp you, so he took my 45 out, he put him in mid wicket, and he's like just bowl the same ball, and he hit me for six over wide mid on. And I was like, okay, it was a half volley, but if he's going to try and take that shot on, and I can land it on length, I reckon I'm in the game. And then he chipped it to the mid wicket, which was that was more of less of my bowling, it was more the brilliance of the tactics from Scotty. So yeah, I think that's how those two went.
yeah. I mean, that speaks to that communication that you're talking about. From teammates in order to allow you to be at your best as well, because it will help you in order to bowl the ball that you need to do in order to get the respective batsman out. And I was just curious as well in terms of it's something I wanted to ask earlier about bowling on different surfaces. So have you felt that, because you mentioned, I think instead of maybe club or training games, the surfaces are different, obviously international cricket and how good it is, because I think a lot of players that just play for their local club team, they're playing on pitches where the run up is, there's a pothole, for example, in the middle of the run up, or sometimes the grass is like different to where the actual astroturf pitch starts. So there's like a gap, or there's like a height difference from like the grass onto the astroturf. So what would your advice be in terms of dealing with those kind of situations? Because obviously it's a mental hurdle to sort of get over for any bowler.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because in the Netherlands that's a big thing. You have grass pitches, then you got mat pitches with grass outfields, and then you've got mat pitches with that 4G outfield. Like artificial grass. And I actually played a club that's fully artificial. The outfield's artificial, and the mat is obviously artificial. And that's the reason why I play where I play, is because I really struggle when it's that long, thick grass and you're running onto a mat that's a little bit higher than the grass or even below the grass. Especially like being a rhythm guy and getting so much from my run up. Um, that's something I've really struggled with, and I'm not too sure, how to. I haven't gotten the best out of myself in those conditions. I really struggle, especially in the Netherlands. The grass is quite long in some of the fields, and sometimes it's wet, and you carry the water onto the mat. Um, I think for everyone, it's just like, how can you be effective and how can you get the ball to come out the way you need it to? Um, I've found sometimes bowling in their conditions that I try and slow my run up down, and then try and, control a bit more at the crease. But then obviously sometimes you slip when you're carrying water onto the mat. Um, so it's a good question, because if you find the answer, please let me know.
And in terms of variations, because it's a big thing now, especially in T20 cricket. It's something that you actively do or you try to incorporate in a subtle manner when it comes to your bowling. I know you mentioned it with a particular batsman that you bowled. I think it was the slower one too. So, what's your relationship like with different types of deliveries like cross seam, cutters, or slower balls?
Yeah, I think for me, I was having a conversation the other day with our coach, and if there was some way of tracking it, I think the balls that I've bowled so far in my career, there's maybe 3% have been change ups. Um, a lot of it's just been straight quarter seam, best ball sort of stuff, uh, and that's two things I would say. Is the one is, especially in the conditions that we've been playing, sometimes there is one ball or one thing that is so clear that will bring success. So it'll be like, can you hit the top of the stumps? The pitches are not like super flat, so there's enough there that if you land more balls than not in that area, it'll bring you success. And that's probably why I haven't toggled to more of the off pace. And then the other one is sort of the role that I've played has been more of like a strike bowler. Um, so there hasn't been as much, um, of those cutters. But now in the qualifiers, there was, I mean, I think in the game against Scotland, I bowled off pace every ball. Um, and I've got quite small hands. You can't really see, but my hands are tiny. Um, so that like takes away certain balls. So like my knuckleball, I have to try and hold a bit differently. And then the off cutters, you think of like a Mustafa Zir who's got these like, I haven't met him, but looks like he's got these big hands and these strong wrists that's able to create a lot of revs on the ball. So for me, it's kind of, I have two different off cutters. One that's sort of trying to bounce over the swing and trying to like, yeah, that create deception, sort of like with the ball spinning over. And the other one is more in like a tacky condition, like we played now in these qualifiers. The pitches were taking a bit of turn. It's more of like an undercutter, and the ball doesn't get above the stumps. So I'm trying to like bowl that into a length. It could like kick on or it could hold, but it's trying to hit the wickets. Um, and between those two deliveries, I'll try and use those quite smart in a smart way, um, with trying to develop consistency in a back of the hand or with the knuckleball. Um, but looking through the lens of accuracy, that's kind of, I want to bowl good balls as accurately as, or those off pace balls. If they're not going to be accurate, then that's not good enough. So it's like, how can I have change ups that are accurate and you know on the money?
And speaking of which, what's your approach when it comes to setting up a batsman? Like, it could be some people might think of it as like, like on the third delivery, I'm going to catch him on the short balls, so I'm going to try to set him up accordingly. So my first two balls are going to be a bit more fuller. Or someone else could just be like, no, I don't want to think that far ahead. I'm going to take a one ball at a time and just really focus on that. I'm just curious how you go about it. Do you actually actively, for example, before you're over, have an idea of, okay, each ball will be planning out in a certain way to this batsman if I'm, bowling to them? Or do you just kind of take it one ball at a time, not think too far ahead?
Yeah, there's definitely the side of, maybe it's not as much setting up, because with the type of balls I try to bowl, I don't know if it's going to nip or which way it's going to nip. I'm just trying to be on the money. Um, but with that being said, I feel like there's certain guys or certain cues that I look for A big thing is whether their bat comes down straight. So some guys, especially in white ball cricket, even like the unbelievable ball strikers. Well, this is talking power play. Death's completely different. It's not that important if the bat's coming down straight at the death. But guys, sometimes their bat's not coming down straight. So I feel like I can sort of channel one back at the stumps. Um, and, as their bat's coming down skew, you can sneak one through. Um, but that's also up to whether the ball's going to go and nip at the right time. And I'm not being much of a swing bowler anymore. There's less of that setting up. I just feel like if you can bowl good balls, as you can create more dots, it's going to push that equation in your favor. So that's what I'm trying to do. Bowl dots, as many dots as I can, um, and then then there's more chance that they make a mistake.
Now, I'm gonna ask maybe two more questions before we wrap up, and I appreciate your time. It's been really enjoyable conversation. In terms of your career so far, who do you think has been the toughest batsman you had bowled to, and what was your plans bowling to them?
Um, yeah, I'll answer this in an interesting way. It's like I feel like there's certain guys, certain people might say that the toughest guy to bowl to will be someone that's hit them around the park. Um, but I feel like those are the guys you also get out. He might hit you for 50 in a game, but then you get him out 4 or 5 times, and then he's not averaging that much against you. And I feel like the guys that are tough to bowl to are like, they're getting 15 off you every game, and you're not getting them out. Um, so if I think to who I've bowled to, um, the one guy I think he's a very good player from Namibia is Gerard Erasmus. He's good. Like you really have to be on the money for long, and he puts your bad ball away. He doesn't. He won't hit you. If you bowl a good ball, he'll respect it. Um, and I don't feel like he's going to take on like a flashy option, especially not off my best ball. Um, I think he'd be the one because most other guys that are bowl to you, they hit you for some unbelievable shots. Might be off top of off, but you can get them out. So, and then obviously, I mean, I play with the guys in my team, but like Scott Edwards, yeah, he's good at he respects good balls and he puts your bad ones away. Um, and the way you're going to get him out is you got to beat him. You got to bowl. Um, you got to bowl absolute peach. So yeah, probably then too.
Shout out to Squad West. He's from originally, I think, Melbourne as well.
Yeah.
My neck of the woods as well. So yeah, I don't know what I think he. I don't know what exact club. I remember I was reading somewhere, but
I think he plays for Richmond.
oh,
Yeah.
Richmond. Yes, that's it. So yeah, it's not too far. I think it's closer to the city. So yeah, no, shout out to him. But also, my last question would be in terms of bowlers you've seen or you've played with, which bowler have you seen? It could be pace bowler or even a spinner that's like, wow, this guy's got, skills, has good run up and, there's something admirable about his sort of bowling qualities that you're trying to incorporate in some way.
Yeah. I look back. I mean, with guy, I assume you're asking for guys that I've played with,
Or against.
or against. Yeah. I think a big thing for me is like a run up, and I love when guys, especially when fast bowlers have a great run up, and I love like looking up to guys, especially a guy like Logan, Logan van Beek. He's kind of been a big mentor and helped me a lot with my bowling. He's got a beautiful run up, a nice load. It looks very like simple and easy on the eye. There's obviously a lot of work that's got into that. Um, and then yeah, I speak about the guy a lot, but Rulof, it's not necessarily it's not necessarily one technical aspect, but there's like a fight that he plays with that I've never seen before. He plays in the national team. We're playing against, I I think we're playing against Guernsey and we're defending 170 and he's bowling in the 17th over and they're on 90. And the guy hits the ball past the non-striker and he like dives behind him to stop the ball. And like that one run's not making any difference. But that like fight that he shows is unbelievable. He played a club game, yeah, actually. Um, and just what like he's exactly the same, when he's playing in the club to when he's playing, and I think there are those things that you talk about that don't take much, that takes no skill, that's just like a can completely give you an edge over your opponents, or so I think those two guys have been really big in helping me understand how I want to go about it.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, like those kind of players that play the high, on their sleeve, irrespective of what game it is. Some people. I mean, not to say it's a bad thing or anything. Some people obviously give a bit more if they're playing for their country as opposed to club games. But yeah, it's very admirable to hear stories of people that kind of play both, in a similar fashion, right? Always giving their all. So I know we spoke a lot, and I appreciate your time, and it's been really insightful, and I really enjoyed the conversation. A lot of takeaways from this conversation. But I don't know if you had any sort of final words or anything you wanted to share that we may have missed. You wanted to make mention before I wrap up the episode.
No, I think we've mentioned it all. I unpack a lot of things. I go off the rails sometimes, um, but no, I think it's been yeah pretty on the money. And um, I think the one thing I probably haven't said is the importance of like playing in a good culture, and like playing with guys that have your back, and having people off the field that you can have a bad game, you walk off the field and you're happy, you're everything's fine because you're happy off the field. And that's kind of where I think the cricket for me went to the next level, is like having good relationships off the field with family and friends, and that has kind of helped me process a bad game, and trying to keep that high and low as close to each other. Um, that is massive, and especially with the Netherlands, our culture is amazing. I play with 15 guys, that 14 guys, and all the support staff that feel like family. So going on the field and you give your all, and whatever happens happens, and you come off and you're getting love from everyone. So yeah, that's probably the one thing I would encourage people to when you walk off that field and around your environment off the field's great. That's probably the most important.
Yeah, like you don't want to obviously be in a team where you feel like when you're not maybe on top of your game, then you get off the field and you feel even low because you're not getting the same respect. Like those kind of environments aren't conducive to bring out the best of you. If everyone is obviously, very energetic and very pumped outside of the game itself, then obviously that can help with your game because it eases the nerves and pressure, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like not even just for cricket, but just anything in life, like any place you work at, you want the culture to be good. So it kind of allows you to do a little better at work as opposed to quote unquote like toxic environment. No one will thrive in those kind of situations. So yeah, definitely cricket with being a team sport, that's super important. And sorry, I might ask one quick question before I wrap up. I know you sort of mentioned some players you looked up to when you as a time as a youngster. Who's your favorite cricketer that you sort of looked up to?
Um, yeah, I actually got two more things for you. No, so I've looking up to definitely Dale Steyn and Jock Cullis. They were two guys that I like. Dale's helped me a little bit. I bowled with him at high school. He was training. That was a pretty cool moment. And Jock Cullis, I think he's the greatest player to play the game, in my opinion. He bats, bowls, and fields all incredibly well. And then the other thing I wanted to say to like sort of wrap up was, I think the going back to that cultural and relationship side of things is like having people in your life that want the best for you and will help facilitate that environment. I've got a lot of close friends, and my girlfriend, obviously, she's great for me. She helps me be the best version of myself, and I think tailoring your environment off the field to being the person and the player you want to become. I think that's the most important thing. So yeah, that's the one. If I could leave that with anyone, I think that would be my parting words.
Yeah, definitely. All that's super important for any aspiring cricketer. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And if listeners wanted to, check out our stuff, we're on YouTube. So subscribe to us there on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple iTunes as well. And we're also on TikTok. We're on Instagram as well. So like our clips and follow us there as well. From our special guest, Kyle, we wish you the best. This is Tandem signing off. Thank you very much.